It's always an honor to bring the voices of Chatham-Kent-Leamington to this chamber, and indeed tonight I bring the voice of millions of Canadians as well who are watching this House with a growing sense of alarm. We're debating Bill C-9, which is a piece of legislation that represents a radical assault on the fundamental freedoms of speech and religion in this country, but which this Liberal government masks in the language of safety. Well, Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party believes that every Canadian should be safe from violence. We believe that hate-motivated crimes are a stain on our society. But as my colleague, the member from Elgin, Middlesex, London, so aptly stated in this chamber, we do not need more vague, subjective laws that target the peaceful. We need the enforcement of existing laws that target the violent. Bill C-9 is not about stopping crime. It's about the Liberals deciding which thoughts are permissible and which sacred texts are hateful. And Mr. Speaker, I can't help but draw the parallels of this government's approach to hate speech as how they approach firearms. They target legally vetted and trained firearms owners and not address the scourge of gun violence from our smuggled guns. Here, they attacked the peaceful faith community as opposed to using our existing laws. The Liberal justification for C-9 is that Canada needs new tools to fight hate. But, Mr. Speaker, that's a myth. Our criminal code already contains robust protections against violent acts, threats, and incitements of genocide, as well as criminal harassment. The problem is not a lack of laws, it's a lack of leadership, it's a lack of political will. And now, Mr. Speaker, we're in this chamber today to debate the astounding desire of these Liberals to squeeze their weight of accountability as well by putting forward a programming motion that seeks to bypass the scrutiny of the House of Commons. The Liberals are seeking to bypass the Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights by forcing a deemed move status on all amendments and forbidding adjournment until the bill is disposed of. No more debate. Again, I can't help but think of the parallels over to firearms, how they're trying to go at. We offered to split this bill into the portions that were well agreed upon around this chamber and debate and continue to look at the contentious areas. That offer was rejected. I think we would all like to know why there's such a rush to silence debate in the House or at the committee. As someone personally of faith who is active in my own church community, I know that Canadians are not asking for more vague, subjective laws that police their speech. They are asking for a government that has the courage to enforce the laws we already have. They're asking for jail, not bail, for violent, repeat offenders. They're asking for protection from, not persecution, for the peaceful. Again, think about how they're approaching firearms. However, the reality for too many Canadians is that our streets are being ruled by repeat criminal offenders. Their hug-a-thug bail reforms have created a revolving door where someone can be arrested for a violent assault in the morning, be back on the street by the afternoon. Instead of reversing these failed policies, these Liberals are focusing on C-9, which targets the words of law-abiding citizens rather than the actions of violent criminals. Canadians want a justice system that puts the right of the victims above the rights of repeat offenders to terrorize their neighborhoods. This programming motion seeks to rush through a bill that removes a critical constitutional bridge. For decades, the criminal code has protected those who express, and this is important, in good faith, an opinion based on a belief in a religious text. This wasn't some loophole. The Supreme Court recognized that the defense is the constitutional necessity. It was the bridge that allowed our hate speech laws to coexist with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Bill C-9 seeks to dynamite that bridge. By removing this safeguard, this government is signaling that the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran are no longer protected in the public square. If a pastor stands in a pulpit and reads a passage on traditional morality, or if a rabbi speaks on historical covenants of his people, they are now one, quote, subjective interpretation away from a criminal investigation. We've already seen the former Liberal Justice Minister label portions of these texts as clearly hateful. When a minister of the Crown begins labeling Scripture as hate, and then introduces a motion to shut down debate on the very bill that would criminalize it, every person of faith, every faith, should be deeply concerned. The hypocrisy here, Mr. Speaker, is staggering. While the Liberals use, quotes, priority House resources to rush Bill C-9, they have been utterly silent on the actual physical violence against houses of worship. This programming motion is a guillotine motion. It's actually a censorship motion on a censorship bill, and that's been stated numerous times throughout the debate today. A MacDonald-Laurier Institute report shows that arson against churches has doubled. 33 churches have been burned to the ground since 2021, including in indigenous communities like the Soyuz Indian Band, where the congregation had to meet in the band council office because their church was in ashes. Over 96% of these arsons remain unsolved. Furthermore, we see a 150% rise in hate crimes against our Jewish community. We see synagogues targeted and students harassed on campuses. Does Bill C-9 stop one brick from being thrown through a window? No. It does not. It does nothing to address the rise of anti-Semitism or the glorification of terror. It only empowers bureaucrats to police the speech of the peaceful. Where is the Liberal intensity for these crimes? Where is the bill to protect these sacred spaces? This government's silence is deafening. They have no problems trying to keep faith out of the public sphere through legislation, yet they offer no protection for those same faith communities that are literally under fire. And we're seeing the glorification of terror on our city streets. And yet, instead of using the present criminal code, which already provides protections against violence, threats, and incitement, the Liberals are focusing their resources, this House resources, on C-9. They're trying to make Canada unsafe for those who profess their faith by removing legal protections, while their hug-a-thug bail reforms allow repeat offenders to walk free. This makes no sense, Mr. Speaker, unless you're actually trying to divide Canadians. A Jewish family in Toronto or a Christian family in Ottawa should feel safe in their place of worship. Under this government, they are safe nowhere, not in the street, and soon, not even in their own pews. I think of the people in my own congregation or a member of my own staff who meets friends at a local coffee shop. They pray together, they read scripture, and they discuss how to apply these ancient words to their lives. Under the vague definition of C-9 and the removal of the good faith religious defense, will my staff member be criminalized for a private conversation in a public space? Under this bill, and without the religious defense, a simple conversation in a public space could be interpreted as intimidating or hateful by a motivated activist. This bill doesn't provide safety. It provides a weapon for state-sponsored harassment of people of faith. And what about the churches across this country, including them right here in Ottawa, those right here in Ottawa, that go into the streets every winter? They provide food, scarves, warm clothing, because their Bible tells them to take care of the least of these. This is the practice of faith in the public sphere. But if this government decides that the motivation behind that charity, the scripture itself, is hateful or intimidating, does that work become illegal? I would surely hope not. This isn't a slippery slope, Mr. Speaker, it's a cliff. That's why Conservatives are fighting this programming motion that seeks to push Justice Committee to the point of not being allowed to adjourn until the bill is disposed of, allocating only 1 day for report stage and 1 day for third reading, so that the Liberal government will have accountability at Justice Committee to not make the mistake of going over the edge of the cliff. The Conservative Party will not stand by while this government uses procedural tricks to silence the concerns of literally millions of Canadians. We don't need C-9 to tell us that violence is wrong or that hate speech is wrong. We need a government that actually punishes the violent. We need accountability for those who burn down churches and attack synagogues. We need to protect the constitutional rights of Canadians to live according to their conscience and their faith without fear of the state. I call on this government to scrap this programming motion or to split it like we have offered before. Let's focus on the real criminals and bring safety to our streets and freedom and safety to our places of worship. Let us unite Canadians instead of dividing them by their beliefs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.